directly to the killer who may be in this room. We believe you are hiding in plain sight. For more than 2 years, you never thought we would shift gears to a different investigative strategy, but we have. We likely have interviewed you or someone close to you. We know that this is about power to you. And you want to know what we know. And one day, you will.
It has been more than 4 years since this case took the world by storm. Years of tears, of anger, of disbelief, and of this man, a child murderer. And for at least some of this investigation, this asshole lived near or in Delphi, likely on a daily basis admiring his handiwork. And if there is anything that we have gained from this senseless crime, it's our awareness of his coming resolve. That he will stand before the court of his peers and will give account to everything that he did. The fact is, this is personal for me and for many others. These two innocent girls deserve to have their names and the legacies of their lives made whole. So believe me when I say that this isn't about YouTube or money or fame. This is solely about Liberty Rosalind German and Abigail Joyce Williams. It's time for you to take a seat and let's go for broke. Let's break down what we know about the murderer himself.
A question to you. What will those closest to you think of when they find out that you brutally murdered 2 little girls? 2 children. Only a coward would do such a thing.
This man took 2 lives on February 13, 2017. He stole them, and as a result, likewise, stole the happiness of the families who have been left without the girls now. Now, if we want to understand the killer, we must discuss the blueprints of his delusional architecture as a murderer. Please understand that due to the secrecy of some of the aspects of this case, that I must present theory and speculation on matters. This is my opinion, and I do not present it as anything but that. The crime scene was about 500 yards north of the Monon High Bridge. The perpetrator ushered the girls down the steep edge of the embankment to the ground below. At the bottom of the hill, Libby's right shoe was found on February 14, 2017, underneath the southeast side of the bridge. There also appeared to be soil disrupted nearby. The hill is very steep, upwards of a 70-degree vertical drop 30 feet to the ground below. The most plausible theory on what occurred on the bridge that day is, in my opinion, the theory that this man impersonated a police officer, even potentially brandishing a badge. If we believe this, then it's safe to also say that he handcuffed them. Scaling this hill without the use of your arms would be near impossible, and I think that Libby may have fallen down the hill. This would explain why her shoe was found and why the dirt was moved in the area. So why is this an important event for the killer? Well, just like many that came before him, this power, it's intoxicating for a psychopath to usurp authority over individuals. They often conceal their murderous ways with positions of authority, taking on careers that generally camouflage the hidden monster within them. This type of compartmentalization is nearly universal amongst narcissistic psychopaths. For instance, Ted Bundy was a counselor on the telephone working for the suicide hotline in the mid-1970s. It's even said that he saved several lives, and yet the 1970s saw upwards of 30 purported women killed by his hand. Likewise, the BTK killer Dennis Rader worked as an animal control officer for years. Likewise, After he retired, he became president of his church in Wichita, Kansas. With his career in animal control, Rader accessed many homes and properties and got to carry a badge and a uniform. In early 2005, the BTK sent a floppy disk to investigators. Law enforcement were able to link the disk to a name at the church, Dennis Rader. Police swiftly picked him up, and he confessed soon after. With all of this in mind, there are a few things that stick out to me as an amateur investigator. The first thing, no one heard the abduction or the murder taking place. From where they were, it would have been extremely likely that had they screamed, someone would have heard them. But for whatever reason, they did not. There are only a few possibilities as to why this occurred. Either they were already incapacitated, they were bound and gagged, or the girls were cooperating with someone they deemed as trustworthy or authoritative, like a police officer. I have a tendency to believe that it was the latter theory that ensured their silence and got them to where he wanted. If he brandished a badge, it's very probable that he also possessed a sidearm or holstered pistol. A month ago, an individual identified as Lee Kerr facilitated a leak of sorts that described the crime, the suspect, and the investigation itself. If we are to believe that what they say is true, then the suspect allegedly was communicating via Snapchat with Liberty for weeks prior to the murders. He had catfished them using an image, much like the second sketch. Rumor has it, he aged himself at 19. This sort of behavior is not uncommon for individuals with a sexually deviant past. This also calls into question the true reasons why Libby did a factory reset on her phone just weeks prior to her murder. Did he request that she do this? Was there truly an issue with her phone? I'm not sure that we can ever know for sure until law enforcement has released the data in the case's discovery. It would, however, not be entirely shocking if this were in fact the case.
We are confident that you have told someone what you have done. Or at the very least, they know because of how different you are since the murders.
It would appear that the police had been able to see that the prime suspect here had brought his phone close to the scene of the crime. That between 12 and 5 p.m., the suspect's phone pinged around the location of the old CPS building. When law enforcement asked for the help of the public, it was not a trick. They were looking for a witness to identify their prime suspect's vehicle at the scene. Identifying this would break whatever alibi this person had. This, of course, did not pan out. In fact, this tactic only stood to further confuse the case with thousands more false leads. No matter the reason, I no longer believe that the suspect drove to the trails that day. This information came from a series of pings to their prime suspect's phone between the hours of 12 and 5 p.m. that day. During the crime itself, it is believed that his phone was left at the scene of the CPS lot area. I believe he went there so that he could receive communications from Liberty at the time if he needed to, and so that he could watch both the trailhead and Mears lot entrances. If the suspect drove to the trails that day, it is more likely that he parked in the cemetery and walked down West 300 North towards the trailhead. With binoculars, he would have had no issue monitoring the trailhead and Mears lot entrances for the girls. He likely witnessed them pull up in Kelsey's car sometime soon after 1:30 p.m. that day. At this moment, I believe he stashed his phone nearby and walked swiftly to the trailhead to get behind them on the trail system.
I recently watched a movie called The Shack. And there's also a book that talks so well about evil, about death, and about eternity.
The Shack comment is what I believe is a coded message with some relevance to the suspect. Whether this concerns his alibi or something the main person of interest said to police when he was being questioned, I feel this statement and its subjects of evil, death, and about eternity are strikingly odd and feel like something only law enforcement and the suspect deem relevant. The Shack, released in a wide theatrical release on March 3, 2017, is about a family who suffers a tragedy, suffers the loss of a daughter, abducted and murdered. The parallels to this case are striking. It is unknown whether Doug Carter used this example due to some unusual pertinence to this case or not, but the imagination can run wild. These subjects, evil, death, and eternity, appear to stand out from the rest of Carter's speech as a coded message to the killer. Is he thought to be a religious man? Apparently, yes. Investigators believe so. It's said that at least some aspect of the crime scene was religious in nature, though it is not in a Christian sense. It's likely rooted in some form of religious symbology. Could there have been markings or symbols left on or near the bodies? Yes. Possibly it consisted of ancient Norse symbols, very popularly found in that area, being used by various clubs and groups throughout the southern United States. Of course, we can't know for sure.
To the murderer, I believe you have just a little bit of a conscience left. And I can assure you that how you left them in that woods is not what they're experiencing today. To the family, I hope that you all will give them some time, because we're going to be asking that there's no media inquiry or no media response for at least the next 2 weeks, and I hope you understand why. The family found out about this information this morning. I just want the family to know that when I take my last breath on this earth, I'll be thinking of them.
Superintendent Doug Carter of the Indiana State Police. He's my hero. With love permeating from his heart, he's what every police officer should strive to even be half as good as. I'm so happy that the families have him, and that he's overseeing this case, defending the innocent, and fighting for truth. God bless Doug Carter.
There's going to be a tremendous amount of questions. I know that. Never in my career have I stood in front of something like this. Please be patient with us, please. We're just beginning. We are just now beginning. And I can tell you on behalf of the sheriff and the police chief, so many other partners that have stood with us over this period of time, that we will not stop.
I just unveiled the person that we believe responsible for the murder of these two little girls. So I invite media to take a look at that now. It's not up. Kim. We're also going to show you a video not previously released that Superintendent spoke to, and also the audio that's additional to what's been previously released. There's only a slight change in it. So give Sergeant Riley just a second as he gets that up and ready.
So let us take some time to utilize the info obtained over the years, with the info in the purported leak, as well as from private sources, and we'll apply it with my personal opinion. Let's hypothesize and break down a profile for the first time. The murderer of Liberty German and Abigail Williams is described as a Caucasian male, reddish-brown hair, unknown eye color, between the ages of 18 and 40, though he may simply appear younger than he truly is. Approximately 5'6" to 5'10" in height, 180 to 200 pounds in weight. Unknown whether he has any identifying marks, tattoos, or injuries. He is likely a physically strong individual, works a job where he's authoritative or part of a leadership role. He likely is an avid hunter or outdoorsman with good camouflaging skills. He's an avid voyeur, likely likes to film or video, is a closet sexual sadist and intelligent psychopath. He blends in seamlessly, likely is well known in his community. A man that loves numbers, collects badges, and/or strange or rare firearms and weapons, possibly even with military background. He was very likely interviewed by police early on. He's connected, likely, to members of law enforcement in the community, knows members of the victims' families, at least peripherally. He likely has a spouse or ex-spouse who suspects him of being involved potentially. Comes across a religious man with a dark history. He likely assisted law enforcement and at various points even injected himself into this case. He was part of the search, was at the press conferences at least in the beginning of the investigation, and he's likely moved out of town since the murders. He's refused to give DNA and/or a polygraph to law enforcement, likely changed his appearance since the crime, losing weight or changing his hairstyle or facial hair. He's someone with an obsession with this case, the victims or their families. He might even be in some of these groups. While it is rumored that neither girl was sexually assaulted during the crime, this was surely the work of a sexually sadistic killer. A media source with inside knowledge has received documents that state that Liberty's video of the suspect was taken at 2:13 p.m. on the southeast side of the Monon High Bridge. If this is true, this would appear to indicate that the suspect has a potential obsession for numbers, given the use of the date February 13, 2017, and time of abduction at 2:13 p.m. The suspect is believed to have posed as a railway police officer and led the girls to believe that they were under arrest for trespassing on the Trestle Bridge. Both girls were handcuffed and forced down the hill. He likely brandished a badge or a pistol during this event. This pistol was said to be a rarer one, .40 caliber. It was apparently fired at the murder scene as well, though neither girl was injured by a bullet. It's unclear why no one heard the gunshots, but casings were found by law enforcement at the scene. Abby was killed by a cutting tool in blunt force trauma. Libby by injury to her throat. Their bodies were posed in a sexual tableau and likely filmed or photographed by the perpetrator. He recorded audio with Liberty's phone after Libby likewise filmed him. This is why she had 2 audio recordings on her phone. Abby had a hood placed over her head and was propped upright against some trees while Libby was on her stomach face down. Both had some form of nudity and were humiliated. It is said that the suspect threw clothing into the creek before he left and was out of the area by 3:15 p.m. when Derek arrived at the trails. Look, I know that my video will be controversial, and it's not my intention to disrespect the victims or their families. We need transparency from law enforcement and from the local government in Carroll County. This has been heartbreaking for many of us, my team, my group, many of the people out there who have sacrificed so much time going after this perpetrator. And we're all tired, are we not? Are we not after the same thing, justice? I can tell you right now, we work better together than apart. And so I extend the olive branch to anyone who doesn't like me or who has made a YouTube video about me. Let's try to see if we can see past our differences and work together to see this through for the girls, for their families. And to the killer at large, I know that you're feeling the world close in on you, aren't you? I promise you, this is your year. We are closer than ever to finding you out there too, aren't we? And in the end, there's no amount of religious forgiveness that's going to save you from God's justice. I guarantee that it's coming, and no cheap alibi posts or forged photos are going to save you from this. Remember, guys, God will give swift judgment to those who don't give up. So be ever praying and ever expecting. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys. I love you. Thanks for coming to my channel.
I wanna stay a while, wrapping myself around everything, and I could send it off so far away.